Conference. We are so glad you're here. I hope everyone enjoyed yesterday's programming, and I hope you're ready for another day of great sessions and learning. If we haven't had the chance to talk yet, I'm Madison Silvert. I'm the chair of the Council on Post-Secondary Education. I have served on this board now for the last 3.5 years. Prior to that, I served on the SAC-COC board as well as their executive committee for about 6 years. And prior to that, on the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. And I'm asked an awful lot, particularly by my wife, why in the world would you give up so much time to post-secondary education? Because for those of you that are trustees here, we all have our different reasons. I can promise you for me, and I'm not saying it is for you, but for me, it's not the basketball tickets because the CPE basketball team is not that good. And for those of you who are fortunate enough to work and get paid to do work in post-secondary education, it is no doubt a passion project. And I can guarantee you for all of the volunteers that are on the council, it is a passion project for something we don't talk about nearly enough, and that is education for education's sake. We talk about it in relation to developing a quality workforce. And as an employer of about 150 people, I need that, no question. But that innate curiosity that a quality post-secondary education instills in someone for the rest of their life, that idea that you are going to continue to learn forever is really what makes a quality employee for us, and is really what makes a great contributing citizen to this Commonwealth and this country. And I think we all know that. And that's why I spend my time doing this. This morning, we'll continue with the conference theme of Better Together with a presentation by our CPE President, Dr. Aaron Thompson. Dr. Thompson was named the 4th President of the Council on Post-Secondary Education in 2018. He is an innovator, a great collaborator. He's probably provoked some thought in you. He certainly does in me. And his leadership has ushered in a new era of higher education in this Commonwealth and throughout the nation. As a first-generation high school and college student from rural Clay County, Kentucky, he experienced firsthand this transformative power of a college credential. As president of the council, he works to ensure all Kentuckians have an equal opportunity to improve their lives through post-secondary education. And before taking the helm at CPE, he served as interim president of Kentucky State University, as CPE's executive vice president and provost, and a faculty member and administrator at Eastern Kentucky University. He has extensive leadership experience within the private and nonprofit sectors and is a nationally recognized leader in higher education. So with that, it is an honor to welcome to the stage my friend and CPE President, Dr. Aaron Thompson. Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Silvert. Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? How many of you had a good time last night? Yeah? We sure did. By the way, I'm going to do a speech today. For those that know me, know I really don't do speeches. But my staff told me I had to stay on time, so I'm going to try to do that. And if I get off of the speech, then they'll forgive me, I'm sure. What a pleasure. It's really good to see everybody. I do want to take a moment to thank my staff, Heather, wherever you're at, Wayne, all you guys, Melissa, everybody put this together and working hard, Nan. I appreciate the work because it takes a lot of work to go into this. This is not an easy task. I obviously want to thank my board. Thanks for the job. I don't all the time thank them for the job because sometimes I don't want to. This stuff isn't easy, is it? It's not. It's hard, but the passion makes it worth it, and that's where I am. The private institutions are here, our public institutions are here, our board of regents, trustees, whatever we call ourselves, those are in the fiduciary role of making sure that we do what's needed to be done in higher education in this state. I want to thank you because this stuff isn't easy. And as Madison says, we don't have ball tickets, but he gets to hang out with me every once in a while, so that should be good enough. But most of you are not doing it for ball tickets. You're doing it because you have a passion to help those that need that next level of intervention to be the citizens that we need for them to be. And I think all of you would agree, we need better citizens. Those of us who are at my age know for a fact that we've done a lot, but there's still a lot more to do. So helping, educating, training, whatever words we want to call it, the next generation is truly a blessing for me to be in this position to do. And I know it is for you also. So good morning. Welcome trustees, regents, presidents, legislators, and friends of post-secondary education. The last time I addressed you at this event, CPE had just completed the Higher Ed Matters, which is the way that we set out the strategic agenda for higher ed for Kentucky. And in this agenda, we set our sights on an ambitious educational goal of having 60% of our citizens with a post-secondary credential that matters, let me be clear, by 2030. Now, when we set this in place, many of you thought, wow, this guy's crazy. Why would we do this? It's almost impossible because we think of ourselves in Kentucky sometimes as being so far behind we're never going to catch up. Well, I've got some good news to tell you today, by the way, but more than anything else, I appreciate because what I tell people all the time, we here at the council, we kind of help set policy agendas. We kind of try to push you to do good stuff, but where the rubber meets the road is with you, and we know that. So today I'd like to reflect on how we've advanced toward that goal and the challenges that, if unaddressed, could derail our progress. For each of these challenges, I'll suggest some policy responses that CPE is leading or endorsing, as well as some strategies that institutions are implementing themselves. But first, let's take a moment to celebrate. We've been able to accomplish a lot together, and in this very short few years, when the global pandemic, as you may remember, disrupted us a little bit, it seemed like we may not recover from what we didn't know was ever going to end. In fall of 2019, total post-secondary enrollment in Kentucky was around 258,000. It fell 4% in the next 2 years following COVID. And that was pretty well mirroring national trends, what we were doing in Kentucky. But by 2023, Kentucky enrollment had rebounded to 262,000. That's nearly a 2% gain. Even as national enrollment kept declining, we kept going up. And I want to tell you some news now. We haven't gotten all of our data back, but it looks like we'll set, second year in a row, some good national enrollment increases. We were number 1 in some areas last year, number 4 in other areas. I think we'll be in that top 5 again. We're not only enrolling more students, we're also increasing the number who complete a degree or credential within the time frame that we want them to complete it in. Throughout and beyond the pandemic, graduation rates have been steadily increasing. 3 years ago, the statewide public university graduation rate was around 56%. Now it's nearly 60%, and you know what it takes to move it 1 percentage point. And we've moved it that amount of time in this length of time. KCTCS, which I'm very proud of these numbers, graduation rates rose nearly 8 percentage points. And that's over the same period of time we were measuring the 4-year institutions. Now, these are phenomenal increases, and you know they are, because for those of us who've been doing this enrollment stuff for a long time, the student success stuff for a long time, the amount of effort we have to put in to get that is phenomenal, and the amount of money we have to put in for our wraparound services also, in many cases, coming from what you have within your institutions. As you might expect, with such strong completion gains, first or second year retention rates are at an all-time high, nearly 80% for our public universities and 60% for KCTCS. Also, in the last 5 years, total degrees and credentials have increased 15%. That's huge. But this is even more huge. Our underrepresented minority populations, and by the way, if we're doing post-secondary the way we need to do post-secondary, we actually go for those that need our help the most. And once we do that, everybody rises. We're not bringing people down to have other people meet. We're bringing everybody up. But we have to work harder to get some where they're at up to that goal that we set. But we've actually 45% increase in our underrepresented minority populations in that same length of time. And finally, because we've been decreasing average time to degree and we've been growing dual credit, and we also, by the way, we're now at a 4-year degree again. Who would have ever thought, right? But the item that we hear about a lot, how much debt that people are accumulating. You know, over and over again, people say, well, post-secondary education isn't worth it because you guys are debt generators. You know, $120,000 for a degree that people don't use. Well, when we look at our undergraduate debt in Kentucky in the last 5 years, we have decreased the average from $29,000 to $26,000. And that's huge. And it's looking even better for next year. We haven't gotten all of our numbers, but it looks like we're going to decrease it significantly again. So when we talk about the value of higher education, and I want to be clear on where I am on debt. If you borrow money and you borrow the right amount for the right credential you're trying to get, and you're able to get a job with that credential and easily pay that back and buy a home and do some other stuff with it, then we've done our job. It's an investment. When it doesn't become an investment, when we let them borrow money for a credential that may not get them very far, or they may not get a credential, then that's not good. So in Kentucky, we've been focusing on that. Not necessarily telling people not to borrow, but telling people to borrow smartly. And the other thing I will say, only 42% of our Kentucky students are borrowing money, down from 59%. That's another item you can actually applause with. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please, yeah. These improvements, along with the increases in short-term certificates, have raised our educational attainment rate to 55%. We are on track to get to our 60%. If COVID or some other pandemic doesn't happen again, I think we will get there. I am very proud, and I want you all seriously this time to really give yourselves a hand, because that's huge. 55% of Kentucky folk that are in the state working to help provide for this economy now have a post-secondary credential that matters. Come on, give yourselves another hand. But looking ahead at 2030 and beyond, there are some potential speed bumps we're going to talk about here on the horizon. Public higher education institutions are navigating a rapidly evolving landscape, no doubt. The pressures on institutions are mounting due to enrollment volatility, demographic shifts, economic uncertainties, and the rise of alternate credentials. And these are items that I know all of us are looking at. The providers that are out there saying, hey, I got a better and easier and cheaper way to get you to your goal. I'm not giving them a hard time. I'm just saying that we need to be aware that they're there, and we need to be looking and evaluating what we're doing to make sure that we do it better than they can do it. If you read the higher education headlines, you've also no doubt heard about the looming enrollment cliff during the fall in birth rates after the 2008 recession. The number of high school graduates is expected to peak next year and the year after. The Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education predicts that the number of graduating seniors in the U.S. will fall almost 11% from now until 2037. Now, what will it look like in Kentucky? You all know I like that Kentucky has our data, and we have one of the best data systems, and we have the best, no one of the best, let me just say. And so we can look at it, and we can use their modeling even, and it tells us that we're in a little bit better shape than the nation. Our projected decrease will be about 3%. However, as many of us deal with other Kentucky issues around what's going on, such as the high school going rate and so on, we know that our disparities are not the same across our regions. The rural-urban divide is really an issue, no doubt. Urban areas around the Golden Triangle actually will experience a moderate growth in the number of 15 to 19-year-olds in the next 15 years, and that will continually to accelerate until 2035. However, our rural areas, particularly eastern Kentucky and the Pennyroyal region of western Kentucky, will experience population declines, and some will be fairly steep, to be honest with you. There is another complication. During the period of 6% growth in high school graduates, our college going rate is falling, and that's not where we want to be. It's actually fallen, if you look at even students that go out of state, it's fallen in the last many years from 60% to 53%. About 47.8% go to an in-state in-state university or college. And looking to 2035, we are going to have to focus on this as a way to make sure that we're doing what we're needing to do to reach that 2030 goal. We have to increase this pipeline to get more people into college, and that gets down to the value proposition that I'll mention a little bit later. Now, how can we and our higher education system rise to this enrollment challenge? I'd like to suggest three major policy responses. For traditional age population, we need early post-secondary experiences and a simpler admissions process. For those who says, well, my admissions process is the best ever, I would ask us to evaluate that. We all know that applying for college is a marathon and not a sprint. Unfortunately, the less familiar you are with the process, the less likely you are to make it to the finish line, or even starting early. Early post-secondary experiences like dual credit and summer bridge programs give students valuable exposure to college life and the motivation and confidence to take the next step toward their education. And we know that the more disenfranchised you are, the more true that statement is. As for the application process, CPE recently received a grant from Lumina Foundation to explore how we can simplify college admissions, how we can especially focus on first generation and low income students. Some states like Idaho and Arizona have implemented direct admissions. I would ask you to take a look at this. I mean, seriously, when I think about many of us who have, your selectivity rates may not be huge, and we know the data already. We know that if a high school senior going in to their senior year, since most of us in post-secondary now provide that high school last year ourselves with dual credit, we know that their GPAs probably don't change significantly. They don't fall significantly, but they don't change significantly. Why not tell them you're already admitted to XY University or XY College? Let them know that they've already achieved a particular goal toward that. Secondly, we need to attract more non-traditional and post-traditional students. We know that we can't get where we need to get by 2030 unless we get more of these adult learners back into our institutions. And we're accelerating our efforts in this area. Our Student Success Collaborative is holding a convening in October, I hope you can come, by the way, on removing barriers to adult re-enrollment. We've developed a statewide adult learner action plan with recommendations for both short-term and long-term action. These include online and hybrid programs, flexible scheduling, and support services such as childcare. Institutions across the Commonwealth have responded to this call, and I'm so proud of you for doing so. They are offering more competency-based programs, allowing adults to bypass material they already know and move toward an accelerated event. The University of Louisville, for an example, offers competency-based programs, master's degrees in teaching and learning as one example, as well as certificates in ESL and transportation engineering. Credit for prior learning is in a similar model, which results toward learn through work experience is taking place at Kentucky State University. We're proud of what Kentucky State has been able to do over the last year, especially in this area. Western Kentucky University and Murray State all are offering credit for prior learning at a more accelerated level. These are the kinds of innovations that we're looking to scale in years to come. We've been working with you to provide the necessary research and resources to make these items happen. Now, the last time I'll mention, I mentioned this a while back, but I will say it again, because I think many of us are not looking at our missions, not nearly enough. I say it all the time. I say it almost in every speech that I give, but I have to make this last item that I say toward what we're talking about here, that item, that we need to look at how we can differentiate ourselves more. Now, we have a crowded market. It's easy to compete with each other. It's easy to go for the same student. But how can we look at ourselves and the missions that we serve, whether it's a region or a particular set of programs, that we look different than other institutions? And so a part of what we need to also think about are those mission-critical programs that we're needing in Kentucky in order to keep Kentucky's economy going. So I'll ask all of you in this room, your board members, as well as our administrators, faculty, and others, to think about how do we become that institution that looks different than our sister institution down the road. Now, on this point, I'd like to share with you a quote from noted higher education journalist Jeffrey Salengo. Most of you know who he is. And he says, the way leaders have long defined differentiation is simply by tweaking the same product offered by thousands of other institutions for the same type of student. Rather, they need to understand that learners have a vastly different need and then design a very different set of programs to appeal to those needs. As higher education leaders, I'm asking you to take a hard look once again at whether your academic programs align with your core mission. Are there areas of strengths that make you stand out from the rest? Are there opportunities to ship resources to those areas? You can build on those. By the way, I think everybody deserves shoes, but sometimes you have faster runners, and they may need better shoes. And so these are the ways that we have to think about growing. And by the way, let me be clear, I'm a liberal arts guy. I'm surely not saying leave the liberal arts out, but I'm saying let's make them important. That's what we're doing with our graduate profile. Let's make people know that the competencies that they're gaining are those employability skills that all employers are needing. Now, if you've been paying attention to the news, it's likely that you've seen headlines like the ones that's currently on the screen. These stories all ran in the first 2 months of 2024. Small private institutions have taken the biggest financial hit in this country, with many facing consolidations or closure. But no institution is immune. Even powerhouses like SUNY, UConn, Penn State, and University of Arizona are facing budget cuts as federal relief funds are running out, enrollment revenue keeps shrinking, and labor and construction costs keep rising. To date, Kentucky post-secondary institutions have been able to avoid large tuition hikes, and we've also had a few budget cuts. I'd like to thank the General Assembly, though, right now for increasing the investment in state higher education appropriations and capital construction in the last 2 budget cycles. Additionally, Kentucky's state financial aid programs are among the best funded in the nation. A lot of the credit goes to our campuses, though. So when you look at, we have shifted tremendously from merit-based scholarships to need-based scholarships. Many of our campuses are giving more institutional aid out than they're getting with federal and state aid. That's really getting you where you need to go, and I appreciate that. I'm also confident that Kentucky post-secondary system can weather these uncertain economic times, but it will take a concerted, careful planning process and a willingness to disrupt the status quo. As higher education leaders, here are some key questions I will ask you to think about and ask yourselves. 1, how are you restructuring the administrative or academic side of the house to right-size your institution? By right-sizing, I don't mean necessarily downsizing. It's true that you may need to reduce in some cases or eliminate low-demand programs and services, but you also need to grow in high-demand areas. I caution against entering a new academic field if you don't already have the faculty expertise. We see this in our data. A lot of people say, hey, this just sounds like a great program. What is the cost? Well, there's no cost. I just have to hire 10 faculty, right? You know, for sure, we need to be advancing our programs in the areas of need. But we also need to make sure that we can actually supply the resources to help those programs be the programs they need to be. So build on your current strengths and consider whether partnerships can help offset market demands. This is an area of our conference. This is the theme of our conference, and it's the theme that we're going to be pushing more and more at CPE. How can we partner with sister institutions and others, business and industry, others, K-12, to get us where we need to go? I'd also ask you to keep a close eye on how well your institution is diversifying its revenue streams. An institution can be overly reliant on tuition revenue, especially when enrollment is out of flux. Are there opportunities to market business training or consulting services to companies and communities? Could you lease space out? By the way, I tell people all the time, think about the brain power you have in a few square miles. Your institutions have some of the smartest people on earth. Well, we could sell some of that, right? Not the people, but the products, the knowledge. Why aren't we thinking that way? Finally, how do you optimize operational efficiencies? Are there opportunities to streamline overly complex processes at your institution? Could you achieve cost savings through joint purchasing or licensing agreements? Could you keep an eye on emerging opportunities like artificial intelligence, which may produce savings by automating some repetitive, time-consuming processes? Now it's time to make financial decisions that will increase the value proposition for students and build cash reserves. A willingness to take some risk, and that I understand, folks. It's easy to say that, Thompson, you're up there and you don't know how this works. Well, I'm afraid I do know how it works. To be able to say this. But if we don't say it and if we don't challenge ourselves, we may not withstand what is an economic uncertainty. Kentucky is booming now, but it may not continue to boom. And my argument is that higher education has to be that driver, continuous driver of a booming economy. And that gets to this value proposition of how we need to operationalize ourselves to understand that we are that force that's going to be keeping our workforce educated, that's going to keep business and industry to keep coming to us, but that's going to keep them here in the state. Now, the third issue that's putting pressure on the higher education sector is the workforce pressures. More specifically, the rise of alternate credentials and providers. Many of today's students tell us that they are seeking more career-oriented options with a strong return on investment in terms of future earnings. A host for-profit and corporate players have moved into the higher education space to offer things like badges, micro-credentials, and other training designed to move students into the workforce more quickly. So far, Kentucky employers continue to see value in our traditional degrees, and partially because we have responded to say we are going to actually build what you need and we're going to do it in a timely manner, but now we're working with you on the front end to help look at what you need 5 and 10 years down the road. But we're also heavily trying to give them those skills, those competencies that they're asking for, in addition to the technical skills. So now how do we respond? A key strategy that institutions are using to remain competitive and relevant is forging stronger partnerships with business and industry, as I mentioned earlier. You may be aware that CPE created a new unit that focuses on workforce and economic development. We have made a concerted effort to strengthen partnerships with legislators, employers, and other state agencies to expand talent pipeline in key industries, beginning with healthcare. With funding from the General Assembly, we awarded grants to institutions that have increased the number of public-private partnerships in the healthcare space. We have provided scholarships to students. We've enabled the development of career pathways, stackable credentials, and other certifications designed to fill critical workforce shortages in less time. I keep talking about just some of the successes of those. You know, we got $10 million from the legislature a few years ago, and we got 50 healthcare partners who, 47 healthcare partners who put 50 million of their dollars in. They want skin in the game also, but we have to lead this process. Another example I'm proud of is our Climb Health Initiative. That's a good example of how public post-secondary institutions can use short-term stackable certificates as an on-ramp to a traditional degree. CPE is working with the KCTCS Systems Office to provide a career pathway to individuals in recovery from addiction. And they can move on from that initial certification to baccalaureate degrees like at Morehead State University in social work. And on now, we're building out the pipeline to master's degrees. And through a series of stackable credentials, these individuals are training while at the same time they're working. These are the kinds of efforts that will engage more of our adult workforce in post-secondary education and will increase the relevancy and the value of that to them and to others. Now, the last policy response I'll mention is compressed or accelerated degree options. And nearly every Kentucky institution now, though, offers some type of accelerated programming. I'll just list a few. UK Blue enables students to complete an undergraduate and graduate law degree in 6 years instead of 7. EKU has an accelerated 3+2 program in public health. Morehead allows undergraduates with at least 90 hours to enroll in graduate courses and be considered early admissions to the graduate school. NKU has a host of accelerated online baccalaureate degree programs that can be completed in less than a year, depending on how many credits are transferred in. Now, I applaud these efforts. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not just saying we have to look at this in a quantitative way. Let's get people through fast with less than. I'm saying let's look at how they can work with us based on where they're at to get them the credential or a degree that matters. So we're not giving up quality in that process. In conclusion, the next 10 or 15 years are going to pose significant challenges to our sector. Opinion polls suggest that Americans are losing confidence in higher education. Rising college costs are causing some people to turn to short-term certificates. Some are foregoing post-secondary altogether. I just want to take a moment to say this, that if we haven't done our job, I use the analogy of a choir, all of us in this room know the value of post-secondary. And we've let other people kind of define that value proposition for us. Now, I would argue that many people say people that don't need, well, not everybody needs college. And by the way, community and technical colleges, or those trade programs, those trade programs are colleges in Kentucky. Most of those folks will probably have a post-secondary degree themselves, or probably will have their kids wanting to get one. But we've let that rhetoric go without us speaking up nearly as loud as we should. And I tell people, yes, we are the choir, we believe in this, but we have to learn how to sing together. We have to be better singers. We have to let people know the value of what this is. But as in the case, adversity can bring out the best in us. It can make us more creative, more entrepreneurial, and more willing to experiment. As you've heard this morning, institutions around the country and here in the Commonwealth are taking innovative steps to manage cost, appeal to new audiences, and demonstrate their value to the questioning public. Kentucky higher education is well positioned compared to many other states, no doubt, and if you've been reading, we've gotten a lot of awards and a lot of accolades nationally for being in that position. Further improvements, though, in retention could offset much of the predicted losses associated with the enrollment cliff. Expanding post-secondary access is another way to increase financial sustainability while improving opportunities for Kentuckians who have not historically benefited from higher education. No matter what the rhetoric is out there, it's our job to get as many of these folks in, no matter where they're coming from, the demographic they represent, and make sure we do what we can to get them to the finish line. Let's continue to pursue equity, no doubt about it. Whatever words we want to use, whatever language, nomenclature we want to use, The idea of giving students what they need, no matter where they're coming from, their income category, or their demographic, it's our job to give them what they need, where they're at to get to the finish line. Now, Nathan Graw, an economist at Carleton College, is the author of a recent book called The Agile College. I was fortunate to hear him speak this summer in Washington, D.C. His book explores demographic challenges in great detail, but ultimately offers reassurance that higher education professionals and other policymakers will be there where they need to be at the time that they need to be. So I'll end with his words. As disruptive as recent demographic shifts can be, schools that constructively engage the changing environment can emerge stronger as a result. Armed with projections of the future and proactive examples, higher education can prepare to meet the needs of the next generation of students. Thus, together, we can navigate the decade ahead and reaffirm the vital role that higher education plays in shaping our future workforce and our society. So I want to thank you for your hard work once again. I want to make sure that more than anything else, that I tell you that I'm blessed to be the head of higher education for Kentucky. That little country boy from Clay County, I hope you can see the example of what can be created with this kind of work that we're doing. Thank you very much.